What is the most uncomfortable question you have ever asked someone?
It felt like I was asking this really personal question, right? Like, hey, how much money do you make? Or something that was totally inappropriate. And that's how it felt inside.
Hey there, it's Julie. Welcome to Uncomfy, a show about sticking with moments that challenge us even when they're uncomfortable. And you're probably wondering, why would anyone choose to be uncomfortable? But I know from personal experience, and you probably do too, that sometimes a little discomfort has benefits if we can stay open and curious about it. That is what we're here to explore. So let's get uncomfy. Heidi Yewman is with me. She's an author, a documentarian, and a gun safety advocate. Her upcoming memoir is called Dumb Girl, a journey from childhood abuse to gun control advocacy. I'm so excited to have her here with us today. Heidi, welcome.
Oh, thank you. So glad to be here with you, Julie. Thanks for inviting me.
It's a funny thing about guns in America that it almost feels taboo to ask people about their firearms. And I mean, I have several siblings who have firearms in their homes, and I feel like it's sort of not my business to ask them, where are your guns and how are they stored? But you have been involved in a campaign that encourages people to have those very uncomfortable conversations. What inspired you to take the lead on that in your community?
I got involved with gun violence prevention after the Columbine High School massacre. So I had graduated from Columbine 13 years before the massacre. And Dave Sanders, the teacher that was killed, had been my basketball coach and typing teacher. And I was living in Portland, Oregon at the time, and I flew back for his funeral and the mass memorial. And it was just so upsetting and so sad. And then to see my former teachers with swollen red eyes had been crying, and just this unimaginable tragedy. And I was sitting there and something just sort of hit me. And I was a stay-at-home mom at the time with a 1 and a 4-year-old. And I thought, I can't just let this kind of thing happen. I need to get involved. I want to stop this kind of thing from happening. And so I got involved in gun safety advocacy. And one of the big campaigns that I'd learned about was the Asking Saves Kids campaign, which is the campaign you had referred to. And it's all about kids' safety. I didn't like the sort of debating about statistics and who should be included in the statistics of death and what legislation should be passed. And it was all very sort of against each other. And it wasn't about learning about each other. And it wasn't about learning different people's perspectives. And so this was a great campaign to be able to talk about guns without judgment. And so being a mom with a 1 and a 4-year-old, I was invited to bring the kids over to play dates quite often. And so I had never thought about this question. And I felt like I was like we all think we're great moms, right? But we all know in our heads that we're struggling. But I knew my kids were safe in my home. I had things locked up. They weren't going to get into any bleach or this kind of thing. But it didn't occur to me to ask people if they had guns in their homes. I don't have guns in my home, so it's not something I really thought about. So it was really important, I found out, to ask this question.
Do you remember the first time you did?
Oh, I do. I really remember the first time. So I had learned about this campaign. I thought, yeah, I'm going to do this. My kids are going to be safe. There's no way they're going to be, accidentally killed at a friend's house, like I had met other moms who this had happened to. And so the first time my 4-year-old was invited to a birthday party up the street, and I asked the mom, I was going to ask her, do you have guns in your home? But Julie, it felt like I was asking this really personal question, right? Like, hey, how much money do you make? Or something that was totally inappropriate. And that's how it felt inside. But what I figured out was I asked other safety questions. I asked, who's going to be supervising? Is there a dog that's dangerous in the home? And no one bats an eye on those kinds of questions. And so this was just another question that I added to that. And I was super nervous, asked the other questions and said, oh, and also, do you have guns in your home? And are they locked up? And she said, oh my God, I'm so glad you asked. Yeah, we do have guns in our home, but they're locked up in a safe, and the ammunition is stored in a separate locked up place. And I was so grateful, and it was like, oh, awesome. But then as I walked away from that situation, I thought, oh my God, what if she would have said, yeah, what about it? Right. Which was always my worry.
What would you have said, do you think? Because that is the fear. It's like, that's none of your business. Or, yeah, I do.
Right. Well,
And, you want to get into it with me, right? It could have gone a lot of different ways.
yeah. But I found through the years of asking, that is not what happens, because gun owners also don't want their children dying from a gun that's used, that's been hidden under a bed or something. That's none of us want that. And so I have had people say, yes, we have guns. And then my follow-up question is, okay, well, are they locked up? And if they aren't, can they be before my child comes over? The key, I found out, is to not be standing on the porch with the birthday present asking the question
and
right
the kid
then.
Standing next to you,
and the kid's
like,
right,
Mom, I want to go play.
There's way too much social pressure to like say ignore the answer or just like say whatever. So yeah,
so when do you do it?
It's
then?
ended up
You
being
call
great.
in advance?
Yeah, that's what I did. And I sometimes I would use humor depending on, I say, look, my son is not allergic to peanuts, so no worries there, but he's deathly allergic to guns. And so, right. So using humor also worked, or saying, oh, my son, he gets into stuff all the time he's not supposed to be. And I'm worried about if he comes over to your house that he's going to get into stuff at your house. Do you have any guns that aren't locked up? And so it's not like this official question that has to be it's a conversation. And often, most likely, people are grateful. Either they had never thought to ask, and then they'll continue to ask when they have their kids go over to other people's houses, or people who have guns have been very like, yeah, absolutely. We can make sure the guns are locked up.
Why is it important to ask that question?
Well, it's important because if you have a neighborhood with 10 homes with kids in them, 4 of them are going to have guns, and those guns are not going to be locked up. I produced a film called Behind the Bullet, and I interviewed a family in North Carolina where they had a gun in the home for self-defense, and it wasn't locked up, and the mom forgot to lock it up in the morning, and the 8-year-old boy found it and accidentally killed the 5-year-old brother. And so this is a tragedy that happens all the time throughout our nation. And so it is really important that we make sure that kids don't have access to firearms.
And it's solvable just with storage. It doesn't have to
Totally.
be a legal fight about whether or not you should have guns or the extent of the Second Amendment. This is something that can kind of skirt all of that really difficult debate.
Exactly. Right. And we make sure our kids are in seatbelts in cars, and we have helmets on our kids when they ski, when they ride bikes, all this. So this is a safety issue.
Well, let's talk about your documentary for a moment, Heidi Yewman, Behind the Bullet, award-winning documentary. It's quite striking in that you actually profile people who have used the gun and injured or killed another individual, or at least in one case, a woman attempted suicide with a gun and survived. So what were you hoping to accomplish by like focusing on the people who had wielded the weapon as opposed to the victims of the gun violence,
Well, my goal for the film was I wanted to have a conversation with gun owners. And so I wanted to, if I were to have done a documentary where I was just talking about the victims, which has been done and it's appropriate, but that's not how you're having a conversation with gun owners. So I was in Texas at a film festival, and this woman came up to me and she said, Heidi, your film it was so wonderful because I didn't feel judged. So often I will watch a film about gun violence, and it's often saying how gun owners are terrible people because they own guns. And she said, I appreciate that your film didn't do that. It just showed the consequences of what happens when you buy a gun, bring it into your home because you want your family to be safe from things that you're worried about. And then the gun gets used in a different way. And so, Julie, the motivation for the film was actually after the Sandy Hook shooting, where Wayne LaPierre, who's the spokesperson for the NRA at the time, he went on TV and said the best way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And so I wanted to explore that idea, and I wanted to explore, so what does that mean when you are the good guy with the gun? You buy the gun for self-defense. You use it in a mass shooting to stop the bad guy, which is the ultimate dream. what happens to you afterwards, after you've taken a life? You haven't broken any laws because you shot in self-defense and then now you just move on with your day and your life. Well, I found that that's not what happens. There's a moral consequence that happens, a moral injury, if you will. I interviewed one guy who shot an intruder in his house, and it was justified. He wasn't arrested. And he watched the guy bleed out on his front lawn, and it was justified, but he has nightmares. He's paranoid. He has neighbors who say to him when he's out mowing his lawn, "Hey, Kevin, did you kill anybody today?" And it's just, it's this thing that continues to happen. And so I wanted to have a conversation and show this is what can happen without judgment.
Did something change in you as you had those conversations? Have you ever found yourself softening your position as a result of these conversations with gun owners?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we're in this polarized world right now, and we're on teams, and right, we're either pro-gun or anti-gun. And so I was on the sort of anti-gun. That's the way I was thinking about things. And so when I went into this world where I was hanging out with gun owners, I discovered that we have so much in common. And, you had a guest on a couple weeks ago. His name was Professor Anand Pandan.
Mm-hmm.
And
Pandian,
he was, I thought what he was saying was very interesting, because he was also talking about going into other people's worlds. And so what I found is gun owners and non-gun owners are the same. We all are motivated in the same way. We want our kids and our families to be safe. We want everyone to grow up prosperous. And so I don't have a gun in my home because I know statistically it makes me less safe, because someone's more likely to use the gun to kill themselves or it be used against them. But gun owners also are bringing guns into their home because they want to keep their family safe. So we're all acting out of love. And this guy that I interviewed, Kevin, in the film, he was very pro-gun. He had guns all over his house, watching Fox News. He was kind of a stereotype, if you will. And I thought, well, this is going to be terrible. But I really started to bond with Kevin, and we had a lot in common. We talked a lot about trauma and about our families. And by the end of it, I didn't see him as this caricature of an NRA guy. I quite liked him. And so I think we have to, as you've often talked about on your show, we have to get uncomfortable. We have to go into spaces that we aren't normally in. And then that's where opening happens. And that's where you can find empathy for other people and their situations and their experiences.
And so what's the then what, right? Or the so what, right? So you find empathy, you find out you quite like this guy who you thought was sort of a caricature initially of the other side. He doesn't change his position. You don't change your position. What was the point?
I think that the empathy is the then what, because I hear stories on TV or I see people struggling and I don't judge them in that same way. And it's sort of, I've found this opening in my heart and I'm kinder to people. I feel like there's an opportunity for us to be curious about what are other people's experiences, because we do judge people so harshly and we put them in the camps and we say, you're this and I'm this and we're opposite and we have nothing in common. But if we go into those worlds and we bring them together, then I feel like that's when there's common ground and that's where there's understanding. And I don't need the other people to need to understand me, right? It doesn't have to be two ways. It can just be one way. And I think that energy makes our world better.
Heidi Yewman's documentary is Behind the Bullet. It's available on Amazon Prime. She's a gun safety advocate, and she's got a new memoir coming out August 19th. It's called Dumb Girl, A Journey from Childhood Abuse to Gun Control Advocacy. You can learn more about Heidi and her work at Heidi Yewman, that's YEWMAN.com. Heidi, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Julie.
And thank you for getting uncomfy with us today. What is the most uncomfortable question you've ever asked somebody? I'd love to hear about it. Why did you ask it? How did it go? And would you ask it again? You can send an email to uncomfy@byu.edu. Let's continue the conversation. Uncomfy is a BYU radio podcast. Samuel Benson produces it, and the team includes Hyobin Kim and Sam Payne. Our theme music was composed by Kelsey Ney. I'm Julie Rose. I can't wait to get uncomfy with you again next week. Hey friends, quick recommendation for your podcast queue. Do you remember that movie that you had on VHS or DVD that you watched so many times it wore out? Well, movies didn't just entertain us, they shaped who we are. And there's a new BYU Radio original podcast called Voiceover, Movies That Move Us, that I think you're really going to like. Film studies PhD Heather Bigley hosts the show. She has guests on, and they talk about movie moments that shifted perspective, that sparked self-reflection or stirred their souls. Plus, they give recommendations for movies you might want to check out. You can listen to Voiceover, Movies That Move Us, now on BYU Radio or anywhere you find your podcasts.